The autumn air hung heavy in the Guyanese jungle that fateful day in 1978. Congressman Leo Ryan stood on a small airstrip, surrounded by desperate people begging to leave what they described as hell on earth. None of them knew they were about to become part of one of history's darkest chapters. Within hours, both Ryan and many of those seeking escape would be dead, victims of one of history's most notorious cults. The People's Temple, led by Jim Jones, would claim 918 lives that day, in what began as a utopian dream and ended in unthinkable tragedy. This dark moment serves as our window into a phenomenon that has fascinated and troubled society for centuries. To understand how intelligent, educated people can become entangled in such groups, we must embark on a journey through time, psychology, and the very essence of human nature. Picture Sarah, a Stanford-educated software engineer, sitting in her San Francisco apartment in 2011. Successful by any measure, yet feeling an inexplicable emptiness. When a colleague mentioned NXIVM's personal development program, it seemed like the answer she'd been searching for. "I wasn't looking for a cult," she would later write. "I was looking for answers, for purpose, for community." NXIVM promised all of that and more. Her story exemplifies what cult expert Margaret Singer observed through decades of research. Anyone can be recruited into a cult at the right time in their life, given the right circumstances and if the right pressure is applied. The truth about cults challenges our basic assumptions about human nature and free will. As renowned psychiatrist Robert J. Lifton noted, the cult experience is not so much about making a choice to join, but rather about gradually losing the ability to make choices at all. This insight begins to unlock the mystery of how ordinary people find themselves caught in extraordinary circumstances. When Reverend Jim Jones founded the People's Temple in 1955, few could have imagined its horrifying end. Standing before his integrated congregation, Jones would hold up his Bible and declare, "If you see me as your friend, I'll be your friend. If you see me as your father, I'll be your father. If you see me as your God, I'll be your God." What began as a progressive religious movement quickly gained momentum, attracting support from some of San Francisco's most prominent politicians. His message of racial equality and social justice attracted idealists from all walks of life. By 1977, however, the facade began to crack. Amid growing revelations of brainwashing and abuse, Jones made a fateful decision. He convinced several hundred followers to establish what he promised would be a utopian paradise, the commune of Jonestown in Guyana. The reality, as survivors would later reveal, was more akin to a prison camp. When Congressman Leo Ryan's delegation arrived to investigate the conditions, it set in motion a chain of events that would lead to one of history's darkest moments. The final day at Jonestown would give birth to a dark cultural shorthand that persists to this day. When people say someone has drunk the Kool-Aid, they're referencing those terrible events of November 18, 1978, though history records that it was actually Flavor Aid that was laced with poison. The phrase has become synonymous with blind devotion and unquestioning obedience, a stark reminder of the dangers of extreme belief. The story of the People's Temple carries echoes that we see repeated throughout history. Like a skilled composer, Jones orchestrated a gradual progression from noble causes to complete control. First came the call to social justice, then the subtle isolation from outside influences, followed by escalating demands for commitment, and finally, the creation of an us versus them mentality that would prove deadly. But the tale of cults didn't end in Jonestown. Fast forward to 1997, when the world would witness another shocking demonstration of the power of belief. In a luxurious mansion in San Diego, 39 members of Heaven's Gate lay peacefully in their bunk beds, having consumed a lethal mixture in the belief they would board an alien spacecraft trailing the Hale-Bopp comet. Their leader, Marshall Applewhite, had masterfully blended elements of Christianity with UFO mythology, proving that cults could adapt and evolve with the times. The sophistication of Heaven's Gate, its members ran a successful web design company, shattered the stereotype of cults as merely attracting society's margins. The world is going to recycle, be refurbished. This planet is about to be recycled, Applewhite declared in his final video message, his words carrying the weight of absolute conviction. These tragic events highlight a crucial distinction that experts emphasize. Not all cults are religious in nature. Like a chameleon adapting to its environment, modern cults can take many forms: political movements, therapy groups, self-improvement organizations, or even business networks. Equally important is the understanding that not all new religious movements qualify as cults. The difference lies not in the beliefs themselves, but in how those beliefs are used to control and manipulate members. Through these historical windows, we begin to see the patterns that experts like Stephen Hassan, himself a former cult member, would later identify in his BITE model of control. One former Scientology member's account brings this model to life. Every aspect of my day was scheduled. From when I woke up to what I ate, even my thoughts had a prescribed pattern. The control extends beyond daily routines. A survivor of the Rajneesh movement recalls, "We were told that outside information was lower vibration and would contaminate our spiritual growth." Now, years later, she understands this was a calculated technique to prevent followers from seeing the reality of their situation. The recruitment process itself reads like a carefully crafted psychology experiment. Cults are masterful at identifying their targets, often focusing on those experiencing significant life transitions, people new to an area, those who've recently lost a job or relationship, or individuals searching for deeper meaning in their lives. The loneliness and vulnerability that accompany such transitions make the warm welcome of a seemingly supportive community nearly irresistible. What makes this process particularly insidious is its often personal nature. Studies have shown that more than 2/3 of cult members are recruited by someone they know, a friend, family member, or colleague. These familiar faces make the initial invitation harder to refuse, and the gradual indoctrination process more difficult to recognize. The path from curious newcomer to devoted member isn't a sudden leap, but a series of small steps, each seeming reasonable in isolation. Within the cult environment, members face a psychological battle few outsiders can comprehend. The human mind, when confronted with evidence that contradicts deeply held beliefs, often doubles down rather than admit error, a phenomenon psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Each compromise, each rationalization of questionable behavior, makes it more painful to acknowledge deception. As one former member described it, it's like building a house of cards in your mind. You know deep down, it could collapse at any moment, but you've invested so much in keeping it standing that the thought of letting it fall becomes terrifying. The methods of control have evolved with technology, but the fundamental human vulnerabilities remain the same. In the digital age, cults have found new hunting grounds. The rapid spread of movements like QAnon demonstrates how social media platforms can accelerate the formation of cult-like behaviors. As technology ethicist Tristan Harris warns, these platforms aren't just enabling cults, they're supercharging their recruitment capabilities. Consider the case of NXIVM, a modern cult that marketed itself as an executive success program. Former member Sarah Edmondson's story reveals the sophisticated evolution of cult recruitment. It was positioned as cutting-edge personal development. The progression from legitimate-seeming seminars to branding ceremonies was so gradual, we didn't see it happening. While most cults don't lead their members to physical death, they can cause profound psychological harm. By restricting basic freedoms of thought, speech, and association, these groups stunt their members' emotional and psychological growth. This damage is particularly severe for children born or raised within cults, who miss crucial developmental milestones and normal social experiences that shape healthy personality development. The path to recovery from cult involvement unfolds like a hero's journey. The hardest part is admitting to yourself that what you believed in so deeply was manufactured, reflects Stephen Hassan, speaking from both professional expertise and personal experience. A Heaven's Gate survivor's family member adds another layer. You mourn not just the lost time, but the person you were before. Dr. Margaret Singer, who dedicated her life to understanding these groups, offers hope. Healing from cult involvement isn't about snapping out of it, but gradually rebuilding trust in oneself. This process of reconstruction becomes a testament to human resilience. As our world becomes increasingly digital, new challenges emerge. Virtual reality and artificial intelligence present unprecedented opportunities for manipulation. Dr. Stephen Hassan's warning echoes with urgency. Future cults might exist entirely in virtual spaces, making intervention even more complex. The story of cults is a mirror reflecting our deepest human needs for connection, meaning, and purpose. Philosopher Eric Hoffer captured this truth perfectly. The opposite of the true believer is not the false believer, but the person who has learned to think for themselves. As we stand at the crossroads of tradition and technology, the challenge before us is clear. How do we satisfy our natural yearning for belonging and purpose while maintaining our critical thinking and personal autonomy? The answer to this question may determine not just individual fates, but the very fabric of our collective future. The lessons of history's most notorious cults serve not just as warnings, but as guides to understanding our own vulnerabilities and strengths. In the end, it's not about becoming immune to the need for belonging. It's about finding healthy ways to fulfill that need while maintaining our essential independence. As we face an increasingly complex future, this understanding becomes not just helpful, but crucial for our collective well-being. Through the stories of those who joined, those who left, and those who study these movements, we learn that the line between devotion and delusion is often thinner than we imagine. Yet, in that knowledge lies our greatest protection: awareness, understanding, and the courage to question even our most cherished beliefs. In the end, the story of cults reminds us of a fundamental truth. Believing in something should never require the sacrifice of our core relationships or moral principles. When someone suggests that cutting ties with family and friends or compromising our basic values serves a greater good, they're likely serving their own interests rather than any divine or noble purpose. The challenge lies not in avoiding belief altogether, but in maintaining our capacity for critical thinking even as we search for meaning and connection in an increasingly complex world.